Back now with more Reset. I'm your host, Sasha-Ann Simons. Now, if you're just tuning in, it's our weekly news recap where we make sense of the week's top local and state stories. For the break, we took a look at the latest alderman to exit city council and efforts to help the migrants being sent to Chicago from Texas. But there is a lot more to get to.
Republican gubernatorial candidate Darren Bailey has released 5 years worth of tax returns.
Governor Pritzker today denounced an independent campaign commercial that blames him for the rise in violent crime since he took office.
The widely seen ad features surveillance footage of a group of men attacking a lone woman on a Lakeview street.
Darren Bailey now confirming this afternoon that he is renting an apartment on the Mag Mile.
Money could be coming your way. Illinois is offering income tax and property tax rebates.
Our panel today is WTTW political correspondent Amanda Vinicky, WBEZ city government reporter Mariah Woelfel, and Mike Lowe, reporter for WGN TV News. Remember, if you're watching us online right now on WBEZ's Facebook or YouTube pages, feel free to leave us a comment or a question. Talk to us in that YouTube chat box, and we might just mention what you have to say about these news stories on the air. Let's jump right back into it, Amanda, with money. Roughly 6 million Illinois residents will soon be receiving one-time tax rebate checks in the mail. Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton was happy to share the good news.
Starting now and in the coming weeks, a person in Illinois can walk up to their mailbox thinking, I'm just going to find another bill that needs to be paid. But instead, they find a postcard sent from the state of Illinois telling them that they have money on the way.
Say what now, Amanda? Break that down.
Hey, who doesn't like money?
On the way, she said.
Yes.
Okay.
At least for the
When's
bulk
it
of adults, it'll be coming starting this week.
Okay.
And it will either be actually a check in your mailbox or it could be direct deposited, in which case you're supposed to receive a postcard. By the way, this will come in the order. It's sort of first come, first filed. So if you filed your taxes right away, you're going to be getting your money first. If you waited a little bit, it'll be coming later. And it will be coming later, as in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Lo and behold, oh, wait, is that when there's going to be early voting and just ahead of an election?
Oh my God, what a coincidence.
Weird that. Not weird that.
Amanda, they're not connected.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, Illinois was in a position because in part of a lot of factors with the pandemic, Democrats will say it has nothing to do with the surge of federal funding. Republicans say that's what it's all about. They're sort of both right. And in terms of just how goods were purchased and what that did to sales taxes coming in, that Illinois, by the way, many other states doing something similar, and in cases, something far bigger than Illinois is getting. This is something that is going to apply. At least the income tax rebates will be for anybody who has an adjusted gross income of under $200,000.
Okay.
Then you get $50 per person. So that could be as much as, and then there's also, if you have an adjusted gross income of $250K or less and own property, you'll also can be receiving greater, a property tax rebate. The most that this would be for a joint filer with 3 kids and property that meets the $300 rebate max for it would be $700.
Oh.
So certainly, but for a lot of people, it might be just $50.
Yeah.
And it is certainly something that is, as I noted, in terms of the timing, one could argue that due to inflation, something that will very much help families. Many others would argue that this is something that Illinois could have used, put money toward social services, toward paying down debt, toward plenty of other things. But it is, you'll see it in campaign commercials, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, Amanda, as much as taxpayers, like you said, they might welcome these rebates, Republican gubernatorial candidate Darren Bailey had a different perspective.
This is an election year ploy. I think people are going to see this and understand this.
Do you think it's a coincidence, Mike, that this gift to taxpayers is coming just weeks before the election?
Oh, it's
as Amanda pointed out.
Certainly not a coincidence. and what you're seeing is both sides will play it up for the election.
Yeah.
On the Democratic side, we put money in your pocket to help deal with the inflation. And Darren Bailey, as you just heard, is saying this is just a ploy to get votes right before, a few weeks before we go to the polls.
Speaking of taxpayers, Darren Bailey released his tax returns yesterday. He wasn't going to originally do that, was he, Amanda?
No, he had said when asked by a Sun-Times reporter, he had said, no, I'm not going to. And then dropped this week, at least the top sheets. I mean, we don't have all of the financial information by any means about Bailey's assets, wealth, we just have top sheets of his federal returns. And it is still interesting. And really what it showed was a lot of deficits, sort of ups and downs, sometimes showing an adjusted gross income of up to about $200,000 in 2018. And then the past couple of years showing almost that much in deficit, which would mean ostensibly, again, we didn't see the state tax returns, no taxable income liability.
Didn't he get millions in federal farm subsidies?
He did that. And he also, by the way, so he owns a whole lot of acreage. And when you kind of do the math on that, we don't know exactly how much, but something like 12,000 acres. And that's some valuable farmland. So while you see deficit and you might think, oh, gosh, he's broke, it is certainly not that. Has a lot of money tied up in farm implements, in actual land. He owns a freight company as well, runs a private school. So this is the sort of things where farming taxes, I'm not in agriculture. I don't know, nor am I an accountant, but they are more complex. So if you look at that, there's a whole lot that could be going on that we cannot tell just from a couple of sheets.
Interesting.
He has said that he is likely to be a millionaire. And by the way, this is, of course, no match. However wealthy he seems to be, which is wealthy in many people's eyes, nowhere near, of course, billionaire Pritzker.
Nowhere near. This is Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. We are going behind the headlines in the weekly news recap with WTTW's Amanda Vinicky, WBEZ's Mariah Woelfel, and Mike Lowe of WGN TV News. So we're going to stick with the governor's race for a little bit longer. An ad that aired during last Sunday's Bears game that came under fire. Before we get to the ad, though, who saw the Bears game? Because that was some crazy weather.
I was in Philadelphia this weekend watching the Eagles.
Oh.
And they had the Bears game on. And no one was paying attention to the Bears game, obviously.
But
they
you
were all watching the Eagles game. We were watching the Bears game. And you just start seeing people paying attention like, oh, my God, look at Chicago. It's crazy.
It's
just
wet.
Like, yeah.
It's something that I will miss as a Bears fan if they move to a dome, is that the elements games, right? Whether it's the rain, the snow, the fog.
I can do
it's
without
so
it.
much
Bring
fun
on the
to
dome.
me to watch.
Slip and slide looks really fun at the end. I wish
God,
that we
so
could
cute.
all have just gotten on the field and done the same. That looks like a dang
did
good
look
time.
Pretty cool. All right, so let's turn to that ad that I talked up there. It aired during the game. It was created by this group called, they call themselves People Who Play by the Rules. Describe the ad for us, Mike.
So as you mentioned, we were all inside on Sunday afternoon watching the Bears game, or most of Chicago was. And you typically in the commercial breaks have beer commercials, truck commercials. This grabbed everyone's attention because it was a black slate with white letters on it that says Sunday in Lakeview or something to that effect. And then the next thing you hear is this blood-curdling scream for about 10 or 15 seconds, and you see the image of Ring doorbell video of a woman being attacked by 3 people in Lakeview and having her like purse ripped. She's pulled down to the sidewalk. And it's a very frightening scene.
And let's be clear, Mike, a white woman being attacked by 3 black men.
Right.
Yes?
Right. And actually, there's now some debate over that, but we can get into that in a moment.
No, let's get into it now.
Okay, yeah. So
what are they saying?
Governor Pritzker called the ad disgusting. At the end of the ad, Pritzker and Mayor Lightfoot's images appear, and the words on the screen say, "How much worse does it have to get?"
Wow.
So Governor Pritzker responded saying it was disgusting and saying that it was clearly racially tinged, showing African-American people attacking a white woman. And Dan Proft, who is the political consultant and former radio host behind the ad, said, well, I can't tell that they're what race the attackers are. You're putting race into this. And so that even now is a subject of contention.
Let's listen to what you just described, Pritzker being all worked up about this ad.
I'm saying that the intent of the people who put it out, look at all the things that they're involved in, clearly has a racial tinge to it. Darren Bailey sanctions these kinds of ads, thinks they're okay, has accepted the support of that PAC. And Darren Bailey is the one who voted to defund police, literally voted against budgets that would fund state police.
Yeah.
Darren Bailey was asked about this after the ad.
What's he saying?
He basically said, look, that's a separate group. If they want to put that out, they're on their own doing that. But if they want to get this message out to the public, you know, he's essentially supporting the message and their ability to put it out there. There were also victims' rights groups that were upset about this, saying that only victims should decide how to tell their story. It should never be taken from them and put in a political ad like this.
Without permission, which was not given from what we know.
Amanda, what about the governor's claim there at the end that Bailey voted to defund state police?
Well, you did have Republicans at large voting. They voted for the tax rebates that we've previously talked about. They had actually said that there were opportunities to give more back or make it more permanent, but that they weren't included in those conversations, but something is better than nothing. Republicans, however, voted against most of the other spending in the budget. So that's what Pritzker's referencing. Is this Bailey, I would say it is a twist to say that Bailey wants to defund the police. He has called for additional spending, but Republicans are the super minority in Springfield. So they don't really have a big say in the budget. Is it true that the Republican candidate for governor, as well as other Republicans, voted against money that will go toward police in this year's budget? Yes, and that is because they voted in general against the budget, which they say they did not have a role in shaping because Democrats crafted it. They have super majorities in the governor's office. They can and did.
Lots to talk about this week when it comes to Darren Bailey. I'm looking at you, Mariah, because this downstate farmer is now our new neighbor here in the city that he's repeatedly called a hellhole. I'm confused.
Yeah, he says he's retiring at what many know as the John Hancock building,
Is it known as anything else?
Right. To immerse himself in the culture of the city of Chicago. Maybe that's like going to Disneyland.
So he moved to
Chicago. Or something like that. To immerse yourself in the city of Chicago by living in the downtown area. Hopefully he's getting out into neighborhoods, but I think he's been calling Chicago a hellhole for months. In many ways, I think Darren Bailey is playing right into the role that Pritzker wanted him to play into when Democrats spent money for Darren Bailey to beat Richard Irvin in the primary. The narrative of hellhole insulting, one of the state's biggest city is a strategy. But, he's also, I think this week said something along the lines of like, it's a hellhole, but what can we do to make this state and this city better? And he's also walked back hellhole by saying, it's a great city, but it needs a lot of work. And that could play to people who also live in the downtown area who think that the city is worse off than it was 4 years ago, and who are experiencing crime for the fear of crime for, maybe the first time in their lives, as we've seen headlines about crime downtown. I think Darren Bailey is living in a district that has seen an increase in shootings and murders over the past year. Yeah. And so he could be appealing to that demographic in some way. I don't know if hellhole is the right word choice.
Especially not for the Magnificent Mile.
Right. Bailey also received some criticism from the Jewish community. This was after his visit to the Palestinian American Club of Bridgeview. What did he do, Amanda?
He has come under fire for a couple of things. First of all, a lot of folks were already incensed because of remarks that were unveiled that he'd made previously in a Facebook video in which he said that the abortion was a bigger atrocity than the Holocaust. So that was sort of the big strike. In this case, he appeared and gave a speech before an organization with a map behind him that erased Israel, period. And so it just showed, Palestine. And so that is where it is viewed as anti-Semitic. I think that it is going to be something that plagues his campaign, but it is among many numbers of things that will plague his campaign, in addition to the fact that he simply doesn't have really any money to get out any sort of message. If there really is a message, there's anti-crime. He has a platform for addressing it, but I would say it is not one that is particularly thorough, and he hasn't gotten anything out. So there you go.
Well, finishing up our look at the governor's rates, Pritzker and Bailey, they're soon going to be facing off against each other for the first time in debates, right? So what are the details there, Mike?
So Nexstar Media Incorporated is the company that bought the Tribune. So it is now the parent company of WGN TV and radio. They're the largest owner of TV stations around the country, including several in the state of Illinois. So they offered to essentially televise two debates between the candidates. One will take place on October 6th at on the campus of Illinois State University.
Yeah.
So you kind of get central Illinois, and that'll cover something like 96% of the households. These will be primetime debates. The second one, 7 o'clock on WGN, produced at the WGN studios. So you'll be able to see the candidates face to face in 2 separate debates that'll be seen around the state in prime time. And I think
should
that's
be interesting.
Yeah, it really will, because we haven't seen both of them on the same stage.
It's time. Yeah.
They've kind
Past
of been,
time, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is WTTW political correspondent Amanda Vinicky, WBEZ city government reporter Mariah Woelfel, and Mike Lowe, who's a reporter for WGN TV News. There is much more of our weekly news recap to come, but first, let's check back in with Lisa Labez.